What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to a new live stream, and today we're going to build a local-first finance application using React Native, Expo, and WatermelonDB. So for the tech stack, on the front end for the mobile applications, we're going to use React Native with Expo. So we're going to build an application for both Android and iOS, and maybe we're going to test it on web as well. And for the routing, for the navigation, we're going to use Expo Router. But actually, the focus of today's video is going to be more around how to use WatermelonDB to build a local-first application. Previous week, we tested Realm as a local-first solution, and a lot of you were interested in seeing how WatermelonDB would work in this situation. Watermelon, we are going to talk more about that, but it's a local database built on top of SQLite, and it's really powerful, and with it, you can build like really performant local-first applications. So, what you will learn in this tutorial, we're going to start by setting up a new Expo project. We're going to build and style the UI of our application. It's going to be a unique application. I'm going to talk about that later. We're going to configure WatermelonDB in an Expo project, and this is going to be very beneficial because in their documentation, we don't talk a lot about how to do it in Expo, only React Native CLI, but it's possible to do with Expo, and whenever we can, we should try to use Expo because it's going to be much easier in the future to maintain and upgrade your project. We're going to also learn how to create an Expo development build because we're going to use some native code, and we're going to learn more about how to work with WatermelonDB to build our local first application, how to set up our database, our schema, how to read it, how to observe changes and update automatically our UI. But the question is, what exactly we will build in this application? This tutorial is a bit different than our usual Let's Clone X application, because in this tutorial, we're going to build quite a unique application that at least I didn't see out there. And this is going to be an actual application that I personally need. And most probably I'm going to launch it on the market, but we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. So the application is going to, I need to give a little background about the whole concept that we're going to try to cover and why this application is needed. So this idea came to me after reading the book Profit First, which is a great book. And after reading it, I applied all the learnings in running my personal business. So that's how we got to this tutorial. So in this book, I'm going to try to simplify the idea and to focus only on the core of the concept. The idea is that if in your business you have all the money in one account, it's going to be very easy to spend all of this money, and then you end up with no profit. What Mike, the author, is suggesting is creating separate accounts, separate bank accounts for different purposes, and one income account, and then every month you go ahead and distribute this money among different accounts that you have set up, so that for expenses you have a dedicated amount and you never go and reach to the other accounts. Another account can be for taxes. So here is a bit of representation of how it works. We have one common account at the top, the revenue, that will pour the money into the different accounts for different purposes. So the first step is you create like separate bank accounts, and then twice a month you have to go ahead, check your revenue account, see how much you've got, and then based on a predefined percentage that you have set up for yourself, you're going to distribute this amount through different smaller plate account. So that's the idea. Like instead of having one big plate that is easy to spend everything, you instead have multiple smaller plates dedicated for a specific need. And based on the book, like this should actually be like separate bank accounts. You cannot do this in a spreadsheet. But the problem that I encounter is that still like once or twice a month, like I'm gonna have to go and calculate all of these based on percentages, and then for that I created a spreadsheet. So all of this is happening like in a spreadsheet. And that's where I was thinking like maybe I can do this calculation and distribution much easier using a simple mobile application. And that's exactly what the application is going to do. It's going to help you keep track of all your accounts and the allocation percentages, because these percentages are changing throughout the time. It will simplify the allocation process by automatically calculating the allocation amount for every account when you're doing this twice a month. And it will keep track of past allocations so you can have a nice insight and see how your business is doing. Maybe we can integrate even some graphs to show how everything is changing over time. And in future, it can also send reminders, push notifications to remind you to do the allocations. From the UI perspective, here are some simple mocks that I created. We're going to have the first page is going to be the accounts, where you're going to set all your accounts. Then you're going to be able to add an allocation, and here you're only going to have to input the income, and then based on the percentages that you have for all accounts, it's going to automatically display you how much you have to send to those accounts. And then it's going to provide a history to see like different allocations in the past, maybe some graphs here in the future to improve it. So that's the plan. That's a nice application. I think it's going to be very good for learning about WatermelonDB by building this application, because there are some nice relationship between all of these models. It's simple, yet we are going to manage to cover all the topics about Watermelon and build this application. So if you're ready, let's roll the intro and let's get started. All right. Hello, everyone who is joining us live. How are you doing, guys? So let's go ahead and right away open a terminal and let's initialize a new Expo project. Navigate to where you keep your projects. In my case, it's here. And let's initialize the Expo project by running npx create Expo app. Then I like to add at latest to make sure that I'm using the latest version and not something that I already have. And let's give it a name. Let's do profit first. Let's press enter. We're going to initialize a blank application, and then we're going to go through all of the configuration setup. We're going to install and configure Expo router together. And if you're new here, hello, my name is Vadim. Welcome to this channel. Here and notjust.dev, my mission is to help you build impactful mobile applications. So if you're on your journey to learn more about React Native, to build mobile applications, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We have a lot of project-based tutorials here, and we're having a lot of fun building them. So subscribing, I would appreciate that a lot. Anyway, let's see the live chat. Where is it? While our Expo project is initializing. Hello, Elios, Sergio, Ivan, J, student, Rogelio. So many people live. How are you doing, guys? Thank you. Can you host your Expo application on web to see how to do it, please? Maybe we're gonna try to do this for this application, but I cannot promise, because specifically like WatermelonDB, like we have to use a little bit a different driver, but we're gonna try. Let's see how we manage to do everything by the end, because we also have to cover the UI, to cover the Watermelon stuff. So can we do full stack in React Native? Yes, and a lot of our tutorials on this channel are full stack. In fact, this is one of the only tutorials that are that doesn't have a backend. However, similar to how we saw in the previous tutorial of the possibility of synchronizing your local database with a remote database, you can do the same with WatermelonDB. I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to show you the synchronization today. I'm going to focus on actually local first, or let's say local only at this moment, but I'm going to show you a good article that will help you do the synchronization. So, привет, привет. All right, so let's go ahead. Here we have our project ready. So let's open it up in Visual Studio Code by writing code and then profit first, the name of our application. And we should open it in Visual Studio Code. We no longer need the terminal, so I can close it here. And let's see what do we have at the moment. Come on. Okay. I'm gonna make sure you can see everything. So before I jump into the, the first step I like to do here is moving from JavaScript to TypeScript. Even though we might not use all the TypeScript features, where we might not have the time to type every single thing, having TypeScript is going to help us keep everything typed. And to do that, simply rename the app.js file to app.tsx. And after that, let's open the terminal. You can do that from the top, new terminal, and let's run the server using npm start. Now when doing npm start, Expo will see that we have added some TypeScript files and will ask us if we want to install and configure TypeScript. Let's press yes, and Expo will install and configure TypeScript for us, will create the tsconfig for us, and our app.tsx should look good without any errors. And later in the same terminal, we should see our development server running. If you're new to Expo, the easiest way to run this application from this point is going to be to download the Expo Go application on Android or iOS and then scan this QR code. In that case, you don't need any extra environment setup, but if you want to run it on Android or iOS simulator, you would have to configure Android Studio with Java SDK, and for iOS, you would need Xcode to run it. So yeah, easiest way, go with Expo Go. If you have already Android Studio and simulator, let's just press I to run it on iOS simulator, or in your case, A, if you're working on a Windows or a Linux machine, to open it on Android. After a couple of seconds, we should see our application running, and we see open up app.js to start working on your application. So here is already our app.tsx, and we see a text element here, and we can try to change it to hello world, save, and it will automatically refresh and display on our device. Maybe I can make the device a little bit bigger so you can see it better. And with that, come on, where is it? Oh, here it is. Cannot make it smaller. I'm gonna do it like this. Probably it's still visible. So let me go ahead. I will try to keep track of all the changes that we're doing, and later you're gonna have access to the repository. So let's do a git add git commit -m init Expo project. Perfect. Okay, so what's going to be our first steps? First steps is going to be setting up Expo router, because our application is going to have a couple of screens. So yeah, let's go ahead, set up Expo router and set up a couple of screens that we will need. The screens that we will need, as you can see here, are the accounts, allocations, add allocation. So yeah, for that, we're gonna use Expo router. Let's open the documentation of Expo router from Expo documentation. And if you're new to Expo router, this is a file-based navigation system developed by Expo, which is built on top of React Navigation. Most probably you heard about React Navigation, where you have worked with React Navigation. So everything that you know and that you can do in React Navigation, you can do in Expo router as well. The only difference is with Expo router, it helps us automatically configure and create these routes by simply creating files and folders. So instead of manually doing the configuration through scripts, through files, through scripts, we are simply creating a component, a file, and then Expo router is going to set up the route for us. So let's see how to configure it in our project. Here it is. Go ahead if you are interested, check more information here. We also have a bunch of tutorials on Expo Router on our channel, but I'm gonna go to the installation guide, and instead of a quick start that shows how to start with a template, I'll go ahead to the manual installation to show you how you can install it manually in any project. So after creating the Expo project, we need to install the dependencies. Let's go ahead and copy this command from here. Let's open back the terminal. Let's clear and let's paste the installation command to install Expo Router, save here a context, native screens, constants, status bar, and so on. I see that my camera is not very well displayed there, but what can we do? I had some issues previous stream with the camera. So after that is done, let's go back to the documentation. We need to change the entry point, basically the first file that is being rendered by React Native when opening the application. We're gonna copy this entry point and we're gonna paste it in package.json under the main field. So instead of app entry, it's going to be Expo Router entry. Now going back, we need to add the scheme, which is going to be used for deep linking, which Expo Router automatically manages for us. So for that, open up app.json. And here, somewhere, for example, under the slug, add the scheme, which can be profit first. Now, if you're developing for web, we can also install these dependencies. So let's actually install them because it doesn't take too much time. And if we decide that we are going to have time for web as well, we're going to do it. So go ahead and install React Native Web and React DOM. And what you have to do is to change the in app.json for web, change the bundler to Metro. But I believe that this is the default. Anyway, you can go to app.json web, and here under the fav icon, let's do bundler and set the Metro, which probably should be the default. Defaults to Webpack only if Webpack is installed. If not, defaults to Metro. So yeah, I believe we no longer have to manually specify it, but anyway. So the fifth step is to add this Babel preset Expo in babel.config, but if we check it, it's already here. So nothing to do here. And lastly, we have to restart our server by clearing the cache. So let's go ahead. Let's check the terminal where our server is running. Let's stop it by pressing Ctrl+C or Alt+C on Windows, I don't remember. And now we're gonna run npm start, but this time with -- clear. This will clear the Metro bundler so that everything is fresh. And now we can even close everything. Come on. And run it again. Come on. Where is it? Let's press again I to open on iOS. Here it goes, and we should be welcomed with this default welcome to Expo screen. We see this because we don't yet have the app directory. For Expo, this is important. The app directory is where Expo is looking for your screens. We can press on this button, but I recommend not to do that because I'd like to create the app directory inside a folder called source, src. Then inside source, let's do app directory. And in app directory, we can have the index.tsx, and this index.tsx will become our home screen. So what we can do is probably copy everything from app.tsx. Let's copy it from here, bring it to index.tsx. Let's rename it, like it doesn't matter, but just not to confuse ourselves, let's name for app to home screen, because this is only the home screen. And then let's save and reload the application. I hope that Expo will take the new app directory that we added automatically. If not, we can restart it with clear cache. But we see the hello world, or let's say here, home screen like this. So this is our home screen. So lastly, we no longer need the app.tsx file because this was the old entry point of our application. Now our application is inside this app directory. I'm gonna also create a new folder here under the source called components because VS Code displays it weirdly if it has only one child. So for you not to be confusing. So we have source and then we have application, and here is where all our screens are going to be located. For example, the index is going to be our home screen, or the home screen if we look at our let me actually go ahead and commit git status, git add, git commit, setup Expo router. And now let's go ahead and create a couple of screens. So what do we have here? We have which is going to be our home screen. I think the allocation, like when you open the application, you want to see like previous allocation and maybe a button to go ahead and create a new one. So the index will say something like allocation. And as you can see from here, we're also going to need another screen, the first one called accounts. To create a new screen in Expo router, all you have to do is create a new file under the app directory. Let's give it a name, accounts.tsx. And from this file, we simply need to export a component, a screen. So let's go ahead and export default function accounts screen. And a React Native component, it's something that renders something. So let's maybe import here a view, maybe a text from React Native, and render here a view, which is a container, and inside it a text saying accounts. Okay, at this moment we do not see it, but what actually we can, at this moment we do not see this accounts page because we are actually on the index page. On the mobile, it's a bit different, like to do the navigation, but on the web, if we go ahead in our terminal and press W to open it on web, our application is already running on the web. Let's wait for it to load here. We see, like if I'm gonna zoom in, allocations, because this is the home screen. But if we navigate to /accounts, we're gonna see here at the top accounts. And the /accounts is coming directly from the name of our file. So what happened here is we simply created a file, exported a component, and Expo router set up the route for ourselves so we can navigate there. On web, that's easy to do through the navigation bar. On mobile, the navigation will happen through a component called link, or there are other methods as well, like using the router, but the easiest way is using the link, and I'm gonna import the link on the home screen in the index, link from Expo router. And let's go ahead and below allocation, let's display a link that will say go to accounts, and the link needs an href property, basically similar to how an a link works in HTML. We need to provide the path to the screen that we want to navigate to. So that's going to be / and then the name of our file, accounts. So /accounts. Now, if we simply press on this go to accounts, we see that we are redirected to the accounts page. We cannot go back at the moment. We're going to cover that in a second. But anyway, we have these two screens and a way to navigate from one to another. You can press double R to reload the application and go back to the home screen. Okay. So these are the two screens, the home screen with allocations and the account screen that we're gonna have later. What I want to do now is I want them to be in a bottom tab navigator. So a bottom tab navigator, it's super simple to set up with Expo Router. The only thing that if you're new to Expo Router that might be a bit confusing is the layout file. So the files that we have in our app folder, they are our screens. They have a URL, a path, and we navigate to them. But we can also define a special file called layout.tsx. And if we also export a component from here, export default function, root layout, the name doesn't really matter, but because this is the first layout in our application, we're gonna call it root layout. So now if I don't return anything, like if I return null, we see that we don't see anything on the screen. That's because layout is the file that wraps around all the screens in our folder. So both accounts is going to be inside the layout and the index is going to be inside the layout. And by returning null, we are basically overriding it. To get back the functionalities that we had before when we didn't have a layout, or what was happening automatically, like by default, is going to be simply rendering a slot here. So the slot, what the slot is doing, imported from Expo Router, is basically saying simply render the child component. The slot becomes the child component, like the screen. So now everything is back to how it was working before. From here, instead of rendering the slot, we can render different types of navigators. For example, we can render a stack, we can render tabs, and so on. So if I change from slot to stack, we are gonna see the header at the top. If I go to the different account, we see a stack navigator with back button and so on. So that's how easy it was to move from no navigator or a very basic navigator to a stack navigator. And behind the scenes, this is using the stack navigator from React Navigation. Now, if I will change this to tabs, we're gonna see tabs at the bottom, index and accounts, index and accounts. So that's exactly what we needed to simply render the tabs. But now explaining the layout, I hope it makes a bit more sense, like how it works. So the layout, in simple words, is the component that needs to be shared between different screens in the same folder. So the logic about the tabs, like what we see at the bottom, is the component that is shared between both index and accounts. It doesn't change, it's the same. Perfect. To change the names here from index and account, what we can do, because at the moment it's simply taking the names of the files. But if we want to adjust them, I'm going to go ahead and expand this tabs component from a self-closing tag to a tag that opens and then closes. And inside these tabs, inside these tabs, I can do tabs.screen and then closing tag. And with tabs.screen, we first have to target the screen that we want to adjust using the name. So the name is the same as the name of a file, index, for example. Then, using options, we can adjust anything that we could do in React Navigation. So, for example, we can change the title to accounts. If I do that, now at the bottom we see accounts, at the top we see accounts. We can do the same for the second screen called, well, the index is actually not accounts, but allocations. And then accounts is going to be accounts with capital A. So allocations and accounts. Perfect. We can also adjust the, how's it called? The icon, tab bar icon, which is probably going to be a component that can also give us the color. How's it called? Focused color and size. So size and color. And then we can render an icon using Expo vector icons. So let's go ahead and find some icons from Expo vector icons. So we need for account, I don't know. Yeah, probably this is going to be good. So let's go with material icons. Let's import it at the top of our file. And then render these material icons for the tab bar icon. But instead of hard coding the size, let's use the size that we receive here. So it's going to be more dynamic, and for the color as well, like this. So actually this was meant for our accounts here. And then allocations, probably, should I do this one? Allocations, will it look good? Let's see, how is the name? I think it's also material icons, account/3. So this is our allocations and these are accounts. Okay, so perfect. We have two tab bars with their icons, everything looking good so far. Let's go ahead and do git add git commit -m. And this is going to be our bottom tab navigator. Let's say if you have any questions so far. Oh, question, is Watermelon better than Supabase? They are very different. So WatermelonDB is a local database that lives on your device. It's based on SQLite. So that means that it will be stored on the device that the application is running. And it's good for a lot of use cases, but whenever you delete the application, you're gonna lose the data in that database as well. Supabase, on the other hand, helps you create like a cloud database based on PostgreSQL. So in case of a Supabase, you have an actual backend, you have a data stored in the cloud. The cool thing is that you can put them two together. You can have WatermelonDB locally, so your application writes and reads instantly, and then you can have WatermelonDB synchronized with Supabase, so that you have the benefit of both worlds. Local database for performance, for being very snappy and fast, and also allowing users to use the application even if they don't have internet connectivity. And then synchronizing with Supabase allows users to save their data in the cloud, maybe also collaborating on the same data from different devices. For example, if I want to use this application on my phone and on my tablet and on my computer, without Supabase, I'm not going to be able to do that, because all the WatermelonDB is going to store the data locally, so it's going to be separate from all the accounts. Now, if I connect everything with Supabase, I'll be able to access the same data across different devices. So later I'm going to show you the tutorial how you can synchronize WatermelonDB with Supabase from Benedict. So yeah, it's with a couple of scripts you can synchronize that and have everything working both local first but also synchronized with the cloud. Thank you so much for using Watermelon. Yes, excited about that. I actually used it in the November, but I had some issues. So it was giving me some headaches on configuring and installing. So let's hope that today is going to go smooth. Watching from Ethiopia. Hello. Love your videos. Thank you very much. What's the weather in your city right now? For me, like it's always summer or late spring. So it's quite hot outside. My camera is hiding the tabs. Okay, so sorry, but now it should look better. So here are the allocations and accounts. Let's see what are our comments. Please show us how to make the synchronization. Okay, we're gonna have then to hurry if we want to manage, or I think that's an important topic to show the synchronization. So even if we don't manage, I'm gonna see maybe we will do the part 2, but yeah, let's try to do it today. Can you show us how to run Android and iOS application using Expo pre-build without Expo Go? Yes, we're gonna do that today, because installing WatermelonDB, we need some native code, and in that situation, we need to use Expo pre-build. So we're gonna show you how to do that easily. Just React, I'm working on WatermelonDB only. Let's see if anything helps. Are you using WatermelonDB, or you are working on the WatermelonDB? If you are experienced, please stay here. I might need some help, but it's gonna be fun. Hola desde Venezuela. Hello. Hola desde Tenerife. I love the way you teach. Thank you very much. Expo Go or React Native CLI, which is best for big projects? For any project size, Expo is my recommendation, because it's going to allow you to upgrade much easier. It's going to allow you to use the whole ecosystem way better. And to get started, you're going to use Expo Go. But at the moment where you're going to need some native code, you're going to use a custom development build, which is in simple terms, your own version of Expo Go. So there is no reason not to use Expo. And even with a custom development build, Expo is going to manage your project. So I'm going to show you that in a second when we get to it. Yes, using npx expo run iOS, you can create a development build. Am I late? Nope. We are just setting up our screens. So let's continue, because I see that you guys are very interested in seeing a lot of features today. So let's go ahead and continue. There is another thing that I want to cover from the perspective of Expo Router. And I think it's going to be better to do it now, so that later we can focus only on the UI and have like the Expo Router setup ready. And here I'm talking about the third screen, which is called Add Allocation. Let's go ahead and start step by step, thinking that, okay, Add Allocation, it's another screen similar to accounts. Let's go ahead and wait, yeah, it's a similar way as a similar screen as the other screens that we have. So for that, we need a new file, and I'm gonna be lazy and simply copy paste the accounts and rename it to maybe not Add Allocation, but New Allocation, or Create Allocation, or yeah, New Allocation is good. And let's render here, change the name of the file, even though it's not needed, because we're not manually importing it anywhere. Expo Router is handling that. Like, it's better to have them perfectly not to confuse ourselves, new allocation screen, and here let's do new allocation. If I do that, what's happening is a new tab is being added to my bottom tab navigator, new allocation. The problem is that I don't really want the add allocation to be a new separate tab. I want the new allocation to be also part of the allocations tab. So we have allocations where we can see a list and the new screen and the accounts. That's the only tabs that I want for now. So in this situation, what we actually want to do is we want to nest a different navigator inside this tab. So that means that the tab that we have here, allocation, we don't want it to display only one single screen. We want this tab to be able to display multiple screens inside. For that, we simply will replace this screen with another folder. This way we are nesting a navigator inside another navigator. So let's see how to do that. First, let's create this new folder, and we're gonna call it Allocations. Now, let's move, obviously, the new allocations. We're gonna move it here, and probably the index as well, because the index is our allocations, right? Right. Probably gonna give us a bit of headache, but we're gonna see. Now, nothing has changed because we still have 3 tabs, because by simply creating a folder, it will only change the path to that screen. So now if we look at the web version, it's going to be simpler to go to these allocations. We are actually going to /allocations /new allocation, and here to simply /allocations. So the folder simply changed the path, the location of our screen and how we navigate there. But to create a nested navigator, we will have to define the layout file of this folder. This is going to be export default allocations layout. I forgot to export default function. And here we will return another type of navigator. For example, we can return this as a stack navigator, meaning that the screens inside this allocations folder, the index and new allocation, should be rendered as a stack navigator. Now, if we look at the bottom tabs, we should see only 2 tabs now. And that's actually what's happening, because in the root navigator in our application, we have accounts and the folder allocation, but it's still 2 things, 2 tabs. So we can go from allocations to this one. And the allocation itself, if I go to allocations here, let's go to the index. And instead of go to accounts, let's write new allocation, and let's navigate to the name of a folder, allocations /new. And maybe we don't even need the word allocation because it's going to be duplicated. We already have the word allocation on the folder. So the file new is obviously that it's a new allocation. So in the index, it's going the URL to that file is much better, allocations /new. Now, if I'm gonna reload, we will see that we do not have any index file. And that's because we do not have the index file inside our application. We moved it to the allocations here. That's a bit tricky. I can add it as where? In the application. Let's add it as index.tsx. And this is going to be a simple component that will be the home screen. Let's say here home screen. We're gonna see how to better do it. But just to make sure that it works. So this is the home screen. We're gonna fix a bit the titles in a moment, but let's go to the last folder, allocations. And here there is this text called new allocation. If I click on it, we see that we are still inside this bottom tab navigator, but we have also on the top a new stack navigator from which we can go back. And at the same time, we can navigate through the other tabs and go back, and we're gonna still be here on the new one. So this is how we can nest a stack navigator as part of one tab screen. Let's go ahead and fix some of the stuff. In the root layout, we have the allocation title. It's not intended for the index, it's intended for allocations directory. So allocations, if I save this and do reload, we see it here as the first allocations. Allocations, and for allocations, while we're still here, index new, index new, we have a set of two headers. One of them is coming from the tab bar, another one is coming from the stack navigator. I'll go ahead and actually, instead of changing the title, I'll go ahead and I'll hide one of them. And I'll specifically hide the one from the tab bar because I will need the one from the stack for the back button. So on the tabs for the allocations, let's do header shown false, and this will simply hide the header. Now we don't have a header from the tabs, we only have an index here. If I go to new allocations, we see new here, and I can go back. Perfect. And we can do the same adjustments for the title, but already on the stack navigator here. So previously we saw how we can do the options through the layout file, but that's not the only way. You can actually adjust the options of one screen, for example here on the index, through the screen itself by simply importing the stack and rendering the stack.screen and then sending options. In this case, we don't even need to send the name because we are inside the screen. So stack.screen will know that we want to adjust the title for this screen. So the title is going to be allocations. So instead of index now we should see allocations. No? Why? Options. Because I'm somewhere different. Because yeah, I'm on the home screen. I need to go on the allocations. Yeah. Now the title is allocations. And I will do the same for the new. So on the new, I'm gonna render the stack and I will title it new allocation. So if I go to new allocation, I see it this, and the back button is even better. So everything now works perfectly. Now the question is, what do we do with this index screen? Because we don't really need anything. We want to make our allocations the home screen. So what we can do is, if I reload, this is going to be the screen that I see by default. But if I simply return here, instead of rendering something, if I return a redirect from Expo router and using an href allocations, actually /allocations, that means that every time I'm gonna try to go on the home screen on the /, it's going to automatically redirect me to allocations. So now if I'm gonna reload, we should see that we are automatically on the allocations page. If I'm gonna try to go to index, I cannot go because I'm redirected back. So now I can go through only these two. And to make sure that we hide it from the tab navigator, actually I don't remember how, but I think it's going to be this way. I'm going to go into the tabs.screen. I'm gonna target with a name the index file, and I think, let's see, Expo router hide tab. There was, I think the href null or something like that. Hiding a tab, href null, but on which name? Oh, on the options. Okay, I was trying to do it there. So let's go with options and just say href null. And now it's not gonna be visible in the tab bar. If I reload, we are on the allocations. I can go to new allocations from here. I can go to the accounts. So now the screens are exactly as we need it for now. And on the web, that means that if we're gonna try to go to the home screen, basically to the slash, we're gonna automatically be redirected to /allocations. So here is this one, here is allocation, I can go here, I can go back. So it works both on web and mobile. Oh, perfect. So I think with this, we have our Expo router setup ready. And let's go ahead and do git add, git commit -m, nested stack inside tab. Yeah, I think that's a good message. All right, so Expo router setup is done. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, we're gonna move on to build some very basic UI that is going to help us move to the WatermelonDB. Oh, just React saying is using WatermelonDB in React Native CLI. Perfect. Stay here. Maybe if I'm gonna need help, I'll ask. Why not start with Ignite boilerplate? Yeah, Ignite is a powerful boilerplate, but I'm always trying to use only the default stuff so that everyone can follow along easier. Okay, so a lot of people are tuning in today. The plan for today is going to be to build a finance application, a local first finance application using WatermelonDB inside Expo. So far, we have set up the project structure. We installed and set up Expo router, the different screens that we have created. Now we're gonna cover some basic UI, and then we're gonna get into the WatermelonDB setup. Deepad, thank you very much. The manual is asking you to hit the like button. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's go ahead and cover a little bit of the UI based on these mocks that I have created. So I'm gonna start with probably the accounts. On the accounts page here, we're gonna go ahead and render a list of accounts. So let's open the app accounts page, and we are going to render these accounts. Well, first of all, every single account is going to be a custom component. And I'm gonna start from that. Instead of writing it here and then extracting it, I'm gonna start by defining one component that will represent, where is it? that will represent one of these boxes. So the box will have account name, the cap and tab, which I'm going to explain in a moment what that means. So for that, inside the components folder, let's create a new component called account list item.tsx. Now let's export default function account list item, and let's return something on the screen. For example, a view with a text inside. The text is going to be the name of account, for example, profit. Let's make sure to import view and text from React Native. And now let's go ahead and render this component, account list item, inside our application accounts here under accounts. So first of all, I'm going to import account list item, and I'm gonna render it like this. Maybe I'm gonna even render it a couple of times just to be able to see how it stacks together. I'm not gonna need anything on the top here, so let's remove it. And now let's go ahead in the account list item and here work a bit with this screen. So we have the name of account profits, then we have two percentages, cap and tab. And to explain what they mean, I'm gonna show you some definitions here. So from the book Profit first of all, an allocation is the process of sending money from the income account, or also called the big plate, to all the small plates. So this is usually done twice a month, on 10th and 24th. You check the income account and then you distribute it to all your other accounts. The way you're going to distribute it is going to be based on a percentage that you assign to every single account. And there are these tab and cap. The tab is the target allocation percentage. This is the goal, basically, where you're striving towards. Like, for example, you want your company to have 20% profit, but at this moment you cannot afford that. So you're going to work towards that. For that, you set a goal, and then you have the cap, which is current allocation percentage, maybe 5%. So now it's 5%, but you want to move towards 20%. So I'm going to use these tab and cap terms a lot today instead of saying target allocation percentage. So that's where they're coming here from. Every account will have a cap, the current allocation percentage, and the target allocation percentage. Let's go ahead and render them also inside some text. For example, 10%. And then another text, 20%. Now let's go ahead and import the style sheet and start working a bit on the styles. So I'm going to define the styles here. Sorry, now it should be better. Style sheet.create. And we're going to have the container of our account. We probably will have the name and I don't know, percentage maybe. So let's go ahead and give the first view the styles dot container. This one is going to be our name, so let's give styles dot name. This is going to be the percentage, so styles dot percentage, and the same for the second one. Okay, for the container, let's go ahead and do, I don't know, I'm gonna start with a background color, white, okay. I'm gonna give it some padding, like 10, to make it better, to be visible. And the amount of space between these account list items, I'm not gonna manage here. I'm rather gonna manage it through the through this component by giving here style and by giving a gap 5. This will add 5 pixels between every item that we render. And maybe even a padding 5 to have some spacing around the screen. Nice. Okay, now based on our mock, we want to display them kind of in a row. So let's, on the container itself, let's do flex direction row. And then let's spread them apart by using flex or justify content space between, like this. Okay, I think so far so good. Maybe we can do border radius 5 to make the round corners there not very visible, but later if we're gonna change the colors, it's going to be more visible. For the name, let's do it, I don't know, font weight bold, font size 16, increase a bit the font size, okay. And probably I'm gonna leave them like this. Accounts. And instead of rendering cup and top always, I'm gonna render them at the top above the columns here. So I'm gonna have inside our accounts file, I'm gonna have a view that will render 3 texts. Name. This is going to be the header of our list. Then I'm gonna have cup, and then I'm gonna have target allocation percentage. Now we should have a very similar style to our previous. Let's actually go with a style sheet as well from React Native. Let's create it. We're gonna have header, and this is going to be our header, styles.header. So what I want for the header there, where is it? Go to the accounts, is to have the flex direction row, to put them in the same row, and justify content space between. So now they are just above the values. And maybe I'm gonna add padding vertical 20, maybe 10, and probably it should also have actually, yeah, I'm gonna not do padding vertical, I'm actually gonna do padding so that they are aligned better. And yeah, I think that should be good for now. Another thing that I'm gonna do is I'm going to group this list together in a separate component that is going to be responsible for fetching the list and rendering the list. So let's go ahead in the components and actually create a new component, account list.tsx. So the account list is going to be export default function accounts list, and it will return something like, I'm gonna use an empty tag, and I'm going to put all of these 3 account list item here. Let's make sure to import account list item in this component. And on our accounts screen itself, I'm gonna simply render the account list, not the item. So this is going to be the whole list. So now it works the same, But I want to go back in the account list, and instead of rendering it like this, I want to render them as using a flat list, because later on we are going to have a dynamic amount of accounts. So we're going to use a flat list imported from React Native to render them as a list. So import flat list from React Native, and here, actually instead of everything, let's start by rendering here a flat list. And the flat list needs two things. It needs data, which should be an array, and it needs a render item, which should be a function that renders something. What it will render this list item. So we no longer need to render them separately, and we no longer need this thing. We're gonna only have a flat list. Now we don't have anything there because our array is empty. So if you're gonna add a couple of manually, like a couple of items, we already see 3 account list items there. Later we're gonna figure out about the data, because it's gonna come from WatermelonDB. So I don't want to spend a lot of time here defining the data. I'm just playing around to make sure that it looks nice. The only thing is that we lost that gap property between the items, and we can get it back by sending to the flat list the style, the content container style, which is going to be the container that will wrap around all of our items. So if I add there the gap, it's going to be added here. So now we can scroll through this list. I think we can also, but I think that's good. Perfect. So now we have our basic UI for our accounts. So let's do git add git commit -m accounts UI and I think we're also going to need a way to add an account. So to add an account, most probably that's going to be a button below account list item. So again, at this moment, my goal is not to make everything look perfect. My goal is to have it functional, so I can move on using WatermelonDB to make this application functional. Then at the end, if I have time, I'm gonna overthink and make this look beautiful. So for that reason, that's what I recommend you as well. Before making something beautiful, make it functional. So for that reason, let's go ahead and continue. And I will use a button component from React Native inside our account screen from our application. And below the list, let's render a button called, with a title, add account. So if I go to accounts, at the bottom, we're going to have add account. If I press on that one, what should happen? I don't know yet, but I believe we're going to somehow, instead of having a separate page for adding an account, I'll rather add a simple line like this where we have editable fields. How to do it better? I don't know. Again, let's not overthink how to make it beautiful. So let's go into the application, accounts. And here below the accounts list, let's go ahead and create a view. Inside that view, probably it can have the same style as the header. And here we're going to have 3 text inputs. We're going to have text input 1, and this text input imported from React Native. It's not visible, but it's there. So if I simply will add a placeholder here, name, we're going to see here name. Another text input with a placeholder cap, percentage, and another text input with a placeholder tab percentage. So now we have 3 items there. I think instead of header, let's do input, which will have basically input row. Let's do the same as the header and add also a background color white. Okay. So if I go ahead for the name here and add something, it's gonna push the other things on the screen. So probably what we should do is add some styles for the text inputs as well. Input. Okay, like this. And let's give the input a flex 1, meaning that all of them will share exact amount of space in the upper container. So if I'm gonna go ahead and reload and go back to the accounts here, the name, yeah, because it's not centered, but yeah, everything it's okay, it's good. Like the name is this, then 21, this, and then there should be a small button there, save or something like that. Maybe from Expo icons, save or check. Let's go with this one from ntypo, and this is going to be at the end. Make sure to import ntypo from Expo vector icons. So here we have ntypo. Maybe 20 is going to be enough. Color green, something like that. So now I can do something like this, and then if I'm gonna press this icon, it should be saved. Okay, we will be able to improve the design. Now we have something to work with. The only thing that's left is to make sure that we have access to the values of these text inputs. We have access to what the user is writing. Because now if we press, I don't like the icon, I'm gonna use like the button that we have here. So on press, add account is going to be calling a function called create account. This is going to be a function that we have here, const create account. That for now will simply do a console warn create account. Now if I press on this button, we see create account. But how do we get access to the values that the user is writing? Well, for that we need a state variable and we need to assign it. We need to bind it to our text input. So let's go ahead and import use state from React, and let's define the state of these 3 fields. The first one is new account name, set new, or should we do it as a separate component? I think it's going to be better to do it as a separate component because it's going to make it a bit easier to manage. So let's create a new, in the components, let's create here a new, where it's going to be to, yeah, let me simplify the names and leave it here for now. Let's do name, set name, and this is going to be a use state, and the initial value is going to be empty string. The same for cap, set cap, use state. It's going to be handled as a string, because when we're typing, that's a string, and when we save, it's going to be transformed to a number. And the same for the tab, set tab use state string. Now let's go ahead and assign these state variables to the text input by providing two values to our text input. First, the value, which is going to be our state variable, for example, name in this case. And the second one is on change text, which is a callback function that the text input is going to call whenever the user writes something. So what we want to do is we want to send there our setter. This way we have a two-way binding to the text input by sending there the value and by updating it whenever the text inputs detects a change. I'm gonna copy it the same for the other two, but make sure to update them. So the second one is cup set cup top set top. Now inside this create account function, we can have access to this create account, and then we can do name. So if I'm gonna go to the accounts, write something in the name, add account, we have access to this value. So we're gonna be able to save it in WatermelonDB here. Perfect. So we have the UI for adding a new account. So git add, git commit -m, add new account UI. Okay. So with this accounts page, I think we're done. Let's go ahead and do the same for the allocations. We could create a function to delete the database. What do you mean? Vladimir is asking, what do you think about 32 GB M2 Pro? Is it overkill? Well, it's going to work well. Like if you have money, go for it. Where you are from? I'm originally from Moldova. At the moment, I'm based in Spain, Tenerife. Look, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking in order for us to get faster to the WatermelonDB, because as I said, this was the focus of today's tutorial, let's stop here with the UI, because we already have something that will allow us to create and add something to the database and then something to read. So let's try right now to go into the WatermelonDB setup, configure it, create it, a simple database only for our accounts, be able to create and manage accounts, and then later we're going to see how to add the different relationships, the different models, relationship between them for the allocations. And this way I think it's going to be easier, and more easier to follow. So yeah, I think that would be a better approach, not to for people that are only interested in WatermelonDB setup, not to be bored with all of this UI stuff. And later on, if you are interested in following until the end, I'll be very happy to help you and to show you how I build this whole application with allocations and so on. So let's go ahead and see what's going to git status. Make sure that we have a clean git, because now, as I said, we're going to start working on the WatermelonDB setup. And WatermelonDB is a powerful local first database. It's a database framework It's built on top of SQLite, and it allows us to lazy load data, meaning that when we open the application, it's not going to load everything there. It's only going to load when we fetch this data. So our application will launch much faster, our queries will be much more performant because we don't load all the data in memory, and it's going to work really well on even low-end devices that do not have a lot of memory. So it supports iOS, Android, Windows, Web, Node.js. It's optimized for React, fast, and and reactive. So let's go ahead and check out the setup, and let's start with the installation. They do not have a guide how to install and set up in Expo, so I'm going to adjust this guide specifically to Expo. So the first step is going to be to install the WatermelonDB library in our application. So I'm only going to copy the name of it, and I'm going to go in our application. Let's go ahead, open a terminal, and let's use npx expo install, and then the package name. Nozbe WatermelonDB, like this. So npx expo install is very similar to npm install or yarn install. The only difference is that expo is going to check the version that is compatible with expo. So everything was added. Let's go back. Let's see the next steps. The next step is going to be to add the Babel plugin for decorators, and these decorators will allow us to use these kind of decorations in our JavaScript, and it will allow us to create the fields. So let's go ahead and install it simply using npm install-d Babel plugin decorators. So I'm going to actually copy the npm command here. I'm going to install it. And in this case, we don't really need npx expo install because it's not something related to expo, but you can do that with npx expo install. It's not going to be a problem. Like, it's going to be the same. So now that we have this one, let's see what do we have to do with it. We need to add it to Babel configuration as a plugin like this. So let's copy the whole line plugins. Let's go in our application in Babel config, and let's paste it below the presets. If you have already the plugins, make sure to add this line inside the plugins array. Now, the next step is going to be configuring iOS. So we set up a Babel. And we will need to do some changes on the CocoaPods to link. The WatermelonDB has a native dependency called simd.json, which is provided through these node modules, but it should be linked through the pod file. The thing is that we don't have access to the pod file, and later on we are going to generate the iOS directory, and we are going to have that pod file, but it's not recommended for us manually editing the pod file when we're working with Expo. The idea is to always generate, the idea is to be able to generate the iOS and Android native projects based on only the configurations that we have here, like in app.json. And this will ensure that this is what Expo is calling continuous native generation, where we never manually update native files like the pod file, but we update them through Expo configuration files and through Expo config plugins. This way, we make sure that Expo can generate these files on the go based on the configuration that we provide here. So that means that to apply this change that we have here, that should be applied to the pod file. What we can use the Expo properties, if I'm not mistaken, Expo build properties, which is a config plugin that allows us to change configuration in the pod file and Gradle.properties in a way that Expo can apply these changes. And this works with pre-build. So let's go ahead and install these Expo build properties. And now we will need to add these Expo build properties under the plugins. So the Expo build, where is it? I think it's this one. Well, if I go to app.json, under the plugins, we have these Expo build properties. It was added here, but in order to provide more information, like more configuration that we want to apply as build properties, we need to put it inside an array where the first value is going to be the name, and the second one is going to be the options. And the options that we want to change, I have them here. So let me quickly grab them. So the options that I have here is for the iOS project, I want some extra pods because from the documentation of WatermelonDB, we see that we need an extra pod called simd.json. The name simd.json. This is the configuration, like for what releases do we want. So this is both for the debugging and release candidates. Here is the path, which was basically taken from here. And then it also has this modular header is true. So basically you don't need to understand a lot here. What you need to understand is with the Expo build properties config plugin, we are adjusting the pod file in a way that Expo can understand and manage on its own, not in a manual way. In this scenario, like we still stay inside an Expo manage workflow, even if later in a second we're gonna create a custom development build. So that should be the configuration for iOS. For Android, I think I'm gonna test it on iOS and then see what needs to be done on Android, because maybe, hopefully, nothing should be done on Android. So yeah, now let's go ahead and let's try to do a git status, git add, git commit -m install WatermelonDB. And now the next step is going to be to create a custom development client. Why? Because we need some extra native code for the Watermelon database. So it's no longer being it will no longer be able to run in Expo Go. We basically have to create our own version of Expo Go that will contain the native code that we need, that our dependencies need. So for that, what we can do is, for this you actually need, in order to build it locally, you actually need Android Studio to build the native side for Android and or Xcode to build it for iOS. If you don't have them, you can use EAS to create a custom development build in cloud. So you can check Expo custom dev client or development builds. And you can see how you can get started using EAS build. This is going to allow you to build it in the cloud if you don't have an environment set up locally. In our case, what we can do is we can do it locally by simply running npx expo run iOS. This will ask us first for the iOS bundle identifier. Let's press enter. And what it's doing is it's creating the iOS native folder based on the configuration that we have here. Then it's installing the CocoaPods. I can even close the Expo Go because that's going to be a separate application. It's going to take a bit of time until it runs. Hello, Mihar Jade. Thank you very much. Elios, send me a message on Discord. I'm gonna try to check it out. Is it possible to deploy the React Native application to the App Store? Of course. We have some tutorials on that on the channel. Check out the deployment. Like we have tutorial how to deploy it on Play Store, how to deploy it on App Store, all of them. Lakshan is asking, please, can you do a hackathon? That's the second time that I hear this request today. So let me know if you're interested in a hackathon, because we are running, every year we are running the Not Just Hack. And this year it's still upcoming, and I'm not sure if I'm going to, we're gonna organize it in the next couple of months, because right now I'm working on a huge new course, new React Native course. Let me show you some stuff. Where is it? Miro. Is my internet connection okay, or am I lagging? Yeah, I'm working on a huge course that will contain 8 different separate projects, and it's going to teach you everything about React Native and Expo, from the fundamentals all the way to the advanced topics. So this is taking a lot of time, and this is my main focus these days. And hopefully we're going to have something public, at least a wait list in a couple of weeks. So if you're interested, pay attention to the channel and to social media. You can follow me on Twitter. But the hackathon is something that I'm really interested in. So it's going to come this year. So what's going on there with our application? Actually, it's still building. Yeah, native side projects are taking time. So that's why I actually love working with Expo Go. But sometimes we have to build our own build. But the thing is that we need to do it very rarely. Like after we create this build, we will have to recreate it only when installing some native libraries. If we're simply installing some JavaScript libraries, or if we're editing our components, we don't have to rebuild everything. We simply use the same build and continue working. After that build, we see that it's opening on our emulator. We see open in Profit first, and this is a separate application besides Expo Go that is specifically dedicated for our custom application here. So it opens, it works the same way, but now it's not the Expo Go, it's our custom development build. And the same is going to work for Android. If you do npx expo run Android. I'm gonna start the build here in the background. It's also asking for the Android package. Let's go with this one. I'm gonna have like the build in the background, so it's going to be ready for later. But we're gonna move on with our WatermelonDB setup. So let's do the following. Let's do git status. So we see that if we do git status, we have 2 new folders, Android and iOS. These are the native side folders. By default, they will be tracked in your source repository. The idea is that Expo is trying to push towards continuous native generation, which basically means that these directories should never be in your source repository. This directory should be generated using pre-build, like always on the fly, in a way so that we never manually update them. So for CNG, for continuous native generation, 2 rules. One is to open git ignore and add our iOS and Android folder here. And now if I do git status, we are not going to be tracked. And the second one is to never manually update the iOS and Android folder and always generate them. Okay, now I can do git add, git commit -m, custom or development build. And we can move on. So going back to our WatermelonDB installation, I think we should be done. Hopefully later on when using it, we're not gonna have any issues. But let's go ahead in the next page under the setup, and we're gonna set up our application for WatermelonDB. So the first step is to create a schema in our project where we will define how our tables and what data we're going to have in our database. I'm actually not going to create it under the model because I want to keep only the models under the model. So inside the source, let's create a new folder called DB. This is where we're going to have database files. Let's create a new file, schema.ts. And here, let's bring this code. It creates an app schema using from WatermelonDB. It sets up the version, and later we're gonna add here tables. Let's go back, continue. The next step is the migrations. I'm also going to create them under our database as migrations.ts. And let's copy the code from here and paste it under migrations. We're going to talk a bit later about migrations, but this is basically the logic of migrating your database from a version to another one. For example, if you're going to rename a property or if you're going to add a new property, you want to have some logic of how should I take an old database structure and move it to a new database structure. This is what migration will be used for. Now let's go back and continue. Oh, sorry. Let's go ahead, and this is going to be our file where we're going to actually set our database. So let's call it the index file because we are inside the database folder. So the index is going to be our database itself. So let's copy this code from the documentation. Let's paste it here, and let's adjust a little bit our imports. For example, our schema is also in this folder, so I'm going to remove a model from here. And what is happening here is it's creating an SQLite adapter, a way for WatermelonDB to connect to SQLite, because behind the scenes, WatermelonDB is using SQLite. It's specifying the schema that we imported using the migrations. Optional, you can provide the database name, but we don't need it. Provide them using the GSI. And then, and only then, it's creating the actual database using the adapter that we set up here and using the models that we're going to define in a moment. So far, a bit of boilerplate, but we're going through it. This is for the web. We're not gonna cover it now. We can check it a bit later. So that means that we are at the end of this page. We can go next to the schema. So the schema is the database schema is the definition of our tables and the columns that they will have. SQLite is a relational database. It's where we have tables, and every table has different columns or fields. So defining a schema, we do that in our schema.tsx folder using the table schema function like this. So let's copy, for example, the table schema, the first one that we see here, and adjust it to our needs. Let's go to the schema itself. Let's paste it here under the tables. Table schema, the name, post, title, subtitle, and so on. But actually, I'm going to adjust it based on our specific application. And before that, like if you're working in a different application, I'd recommend you to do some diagrams of what tables you're going to need and the relationships between them. I already have done that before the live stream. So I'm going to start with a table called account. And an account has, if we look in the UI, name, cap, and tab. So ID, name, tab, cap. Then we're going to think about like the others, but let's now focus only on this account. So we don't specify the ID because this is a field that WatermelonDB will automatically add. But instead of a title, or let's start with a name, this is going to be, instead of posts, is going to be accounts. The table names, try to keep them plural with lowercase, and columns is going to be, instead of title, we're going to have the name of our account of type string. Then we have two things, tab and cap. They're not going to be, let's add some space here, and let's add the name of a column, current allocation percentage, and this should be a number, I think, right? Yes, Boolean, number, and string. Because we are using TypeScript, we have nice suggestions there. And the same should go for our tab. The type should be number. And we don't need the other ones, so I think I can remove them. Any of them should be optional. Name, cap, and tab. I don't think we need them to be required. So I'm gonna leave them like this. Okay, so that's our table schema where we have only one table for the accounts. We're keeping it simple to at least see something working, and then we're gonna slowly add more tables. Let's go back to the documentation of Watermelon and see the next things. String, number, and Boolean for the column types. For the special columns, the ID is automatically assigned for us automatically. And there is also some other fields that we should never add ourselves, like status and changed. But we can add special created at and updated at. If we add them, WatermelonDB will automatically handle it for us. We're going to see later when we need it. Okay. Let's go to the next step. The next step is the models. So the models is a way, like a model represents a type of a thing in your application. For example, all of our tables, like account, allocation, account allocation, these are going to be different models. They will specify their fields, their relationships, and using them, we're going to be able to fetch, create, and interact with our database in an easy way. So let's go ahead and start by creating a new folder where we're going to keep all our models. It's called model. And the first model is going to be account.ts. So let's see it based on based on this example. I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna add it to my account model. We import the model, we define it. Let's rename it from post to account. It extends the class model and it specifies the table name. The table name should match the one that we set here in schema. So in this case, accounts. So let's put accounts. Now, yeah, this is the table name that we define in the schema. Now we need to add the new model to our database. Let's go to our database, which we define in the index.tsx. And here in the model class, we need to add our model. So let's first import account from one folder up, model account. And let's use this account inside the model classes. Here we show an example with this post, which I no longer need, so I'll remove the comments. Okay, that's our database. Associations, we're gonna cover them later. And now let's talk about the fields. To create the fields, we need to use these decorators. And these decorators will allow us to define and link a class property to a column in our database. So for that, we're going to need to import this field and text, for example, decorators in our model account. And then fields are, what's the difference between field and text? To be the same type, string number as the column type. For fields that contain arbitrary text specified by the user, use text, a simple extension of a field. Okay, so text is an extension of a field that also trims white spaces. Okay, so for the, if we look in the schema of account, we have a name field of type string. So let's use here the text decorator. Let's target the column name that we specify on the database layer in the schema, name. And now we can define here the property name, which can be anything in our case, but it would be better to have it named the same thing. And I think we also need to specify the type. String, it doesn't show there, but I'm going to specify because I'm using TypeScript, we are not. And I think actually I don't have to because I'm probably, it's going to understand that it's a string, but later we're gonna check. So we have a text field for the name, we have two more for the cap and tab. I think in that case we're gonna use the simple field, because the text is for text, but in our case we need numbers. So at field cap is going to be a property called cap, and then at field tab is going to be tab. Okay, before we move forward, we have these errors, unable to resolve signature of property decorators. That's because of our tsconfig file. In the compile options, let's add here the, how is it called? Experimental decorators, true. So if I add these and go back to the model, now this property is working. And will it understand that this is a string? No, it doesn't. So I think I would rather type it myself like string. This is a number. And this is a number. Now it has a property. Okay. So we define the fields. Let's see what's next. Custom queries. I don't think we need anything for now. Let's go to the next step, migration. Migrations. We're not gonna do them now. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna do them now. And let's actually go to the next step, usage. Let's see relations. We don't have any relations yet. We're gonna cover them a bit later. Let's check how to actually create, read, update, delete. So, reading. First things first, we need to get access to a collection. Reading. Where are we gonna do the reading? Let's try a very naive way of going on our on our accounts. So application. Maybe in the let's go in the accounts. Let's go in the not allocations, accounts. Let's add a simple button here. Read on press on read. I'm gonna add this button. It should appear somewhere under the accounts. After adding this const on read, console warn read. Come on. Cannot connect. What's going on? Oh, I don't have a server running. So, and for Android, it failed to install. Oh, my Android doesn't have enough space. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to one of the terminal. I'm gonna do clear, and I'm gonna do npm start. This will start with the project, but it's saying that it's using still Expo. It's using Expo Go. So by simply pressing S, it's going to say using development build, and now I will be able to reload here, and it will connect with the server and use it. We can also change here in the package.json Expo start. I think it's dev client, if I'm not mistaken, and this will automatically start it with dev client. So if I go to accounts, I have this read button that I will use to interact with our database and see some CRUD operations, reading, writing, and so on. So let's go to our accounts here in the read. What I need is I need to get access to our collection or to our table. So this is how it works for getting access to the post collection. In our case, we want not to the post collection, but to the accounts table. And this is going to be called accounts collection. But for that, we need access to the database. The database that we have in the DB index here. The thing is that we need to export this database from this file to be able to access it. So let's do export default database. Now from our accounts, if I'm going to do command dot, it's going to suggest us to import database from DB folder, which is our database that we created here. So we have accounts collection. What we can do next is find the record by ID. We're not going to find anything probably. But we can try to write something first, modifying the database. So to modify the database, we're going to need a writer. So let's copy this code and adjust it to our needs. So first of all, our function should become async now because we have that await database write. So all the changes should be put into a database.write, which is a method for starting a transaction. I explained this concept of transactions in the previous tutorial, but what that basically means is in a transaction, we can have multiple operations, like multiple insert, delete operations, and it's either all of them will pass and successfully, or if one of them fails, they'll be rolled back so none of them will be applied. This is great to keep everything consistent, and if we have, for example, in a case of sending money from one account to another, you want to have two operations. First, decrease the money from one account and then increase it to the second account. So if there will be an error between these two operations, you don't want to write this corrupted information to the database, because you're going to either have more money at the end or less money, depending on the order. You want either both of these operations to pass, or if one of them fails, to revert back to the initial one. So that's what database.write is doing. It's starting a transaction. So in this case, I don't need the update. So actually, I'm going to remove everything inside. I'm going to check how to create a new record. So it's going to be our collection.create post. Okay, a bit weird documentation, but it's going to be our collection.create, and this create will give us the account builder, from where we can do account.name, right? I believe so. Test. And then account.cap, let's say equal to 1050, and account.tab equal to, and not like this but as a number, 20.1, something like that. Dot create, and it should also be a wait here. Let's give it a try. This is supposed to start the transaction and create a new account with this data. Let's try to press read, which is actually not read, but it's just test. I should name it test. And what was happening there? Did it show us possible and handle promise rejection? Why? Because cannot read property type of undefined from column schema. Something wrong with my schema. Let's check the schema. Type, columns. Did we add it where we need it? Schema, migrations, index, model. Oh, it's not tab, but tab. Save, test. We don't have an error, which means that most probably it worked. In order to test if it worked, what we can do is I will comment out this code, and instead I'm going to fetch the accounts. So accounts equal await. We're gonna get the accounts collection dot what? Let's see how to fetch it. Query dot fetch and I'm gonna do a console log accounts. So if I look in the logs and press test, we see something. We see something. Not sure what we see there. Query dot fetch. Query dot fetch. Let's try again to perform the test. And yeah, this was coming from, yeah, I had to restart it. But now we see the name is test, tab is this value, cap is this value. So our writing and reading has actually worked correctly. Oh, okay, so that means that at least our configuration has been done correctly. Database. Yeah, at least our configuration is done correctly, and now we're gonna think how to actually implement it in our application to properly work with it. So here, what I don't like is that account doesn't understand what type of model it is. I think we can specify this if we provide here database model account from the model. So accounts collection. Now it understands the top, the cap, and so on. And if I would make a mistake like this, it's going to say that no, cap is actually a string. So now everything is correctly typed. I think that another thing that I would like to do is I would like to create some kind of shortcuts towards these collections, because I don't want to always have to do accounts collection, get accounts, and so on. I would do it where I would do it. Database, in the index, collections, models. Would I do it in the model and export here the account collection? Or maybe here from DB. Yeah, let's export here. Export. Let's do account. Accounts equal to database.get and so on. Can I do that? Now, if from our page, I'm going to import here, not database, but accounts, will I be able to use simply accounts? Or should I name it accounts collection? But it's too long, accounts collection. How do you name it? Accounts collection. Let's name it accounts collection. So let's import accounts collection from DB. And now we no longer need to find it like this. So if I do test, it adds, it works as it was working before. But it's much easier when shared between our files. Whew, okay, good. Let's go ahead and do git status, git add, git commit, install and configure WatermelonDB. For my Android, I think the problem is something with not enough storage. So let me try meanwhile to delete some of the stuff from there. Have a lot of applications there for testing. Just 1 second. Which one? And also meanwhile I'm doing that, let me do again npx expo run Android to make sure that it works on Android as well. I'm just deleting some of the old applications from here. Oh, no, it was running. Okay. So far so good. Have space. It's loading. First of all, it's loading. Hopefully it's going to work, please. Because if it's not, like, it's very hard to debug these errors. We see what? GSI SQL adapter not available, forwarding back to asynchronous operations. It will happen if you're using remote debugger. And may happen if you forgot to recompile native app after WatermelonDB update. What will that mean for us? If I go to the accounts and do test and check the logs, and if I do test again, the first time, yes, it's reading correctly, it's writing correctly, but will it persist? Which means if I close the application, come on, go away. And if I open it again, profit first, I expect the data to be persisted because it's a local database. So if I do test, yeah, it's persisted. So I'm not sure what was that error warning, because if I reload, I don't get it. No, I get it. We're gonna see if that's some to asynchronous operations. GSI. Yeah, in the database configuration index, not in here, in database index, there is GSI true, which has a comment like set it to true only on the OS, and they are explaining it like this. Recommended options should work flawlessly out of the box on iOS. On Android, additional installation steps have to be taken. Disable if you run into issues. Disable if you run into issues. But I don't run into issues yet. So if you run into issues, go ahead and disable it by uncommenting this part and using GSI only on iOS. But I'm going to keep it like this until I run into issues. So yeah, again, as I said, the benefit is that now, like, this is not like in-memory database, which will be lost like when we relaunch the application. This is a local database that will persist after closing and opening the application. If we uninstall the application, like the data is here, but if we uninstall the application, in that case, we are going to lose the data. So again, this is not a remote database, it's a local database that lives on your device and will work even without internet connection. I'm very happy that actually it works on Android as well. And meanwhile, I'm gonna test it to make sure that we keep everything working on both Android and iOS, and maybe even later on web as well. But for now, we are good with the basic configuration. We don't have anything in the Git status, and we can move on to implement and connect it with our UI components to properly work with it and not by these testings. And later on, add different tables, run migrations, connect everything. So it's a lot of fun coming up your way. We are still halfway through this tutorial and hope you're enjoying it so far. If you do, make sure to press the like button below, subscribe to the channel, that helps us a lot. Oh, a lot of comments, let me check. Application related to AI ML in future. We have some integrations with OpenAI tutorial on the channel. Is this an app with local database? I am late, so didn't get it in the planning to watch it later. So yes, exactly. This is an application with a local database. For the local database, we are using WatermelonDB, which works on top of SQLite. So at this moment, we have set up, configured, and it's working. Now it's time to integrate it for all our CRUD operations. Hi guys, am I late? We are in the middle of a tutorial, but this tutorial will be published on the channel, so you can always go back and follow it from the beginning. But you can stay here now and see the next steps, what we are doing here. No additional configuration needed for Android. Well, I don't know, for me it works. So hopefully no, but I can go into the installation guide here and let's see what some manual integrations were meant for Android that we didn't take. So linking manually. Yeah, like we don't need linking manually because it links automatically. Yeah, this is definitely something that we don't need to cover. Using with React Native screens and React Native gesture handler. We have React Native screens, but we didn't have any issues with it. It says that if you're using recent versions of React Native screens or gesture handler, you'll need to set the Kotlin version to 1.5.20 or above. See section above. Huh? Which section above? Anyway, like if you need this, you can do it through the build properties. Kotlin version. Like look, there is for build properties, the same way as we configured in app.json using build properties. Same way as we did for iOS, we can do that for Android. And we can do, I think, come on, Kotlin version, but it's part of what? It's part of plugin config type Android. So let's see where it is used. Packaging options. Plugin config type Android, packaging, no. Compile, target, build. Android, it's this one, plugin config, okay. Build tools, compile, enable, okay. Manifest queries. Again, there was Kotlin version, part of what? Part of simply Android. So it should be here, Kotlin version, and then you specify what was written here in the documentation, 1.5.20 or above. I'm not gonna actually do it because it works for me. So I'm just showing you. This is the part that we might need, the GSA installation, because we saw some warnings on Android that if I reload, come on, reload. I'm going to comment out this were even. Where is it? Here, reload. We see this GSL warning that was not installed. So let's see if we can do that. to enable fast, highly performant synchronous GSI operations on Android, you need to take a few additional steps. Make sure you have NDK installed. In Android settings.gradle, include the WatermelonDB GSI. Oh, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that. So the thing is that, yeah, so far it's working. For this, I would actually look, I think that Moro watermelon config plugin. I saw a built-in, like a separate config plugin created by Moro for WatermelonDB. I didn't test it, but maybe it's going to be the adjustment that you need on Android. Yeah, GSI support for Android. This plugin installs automatically GSI support for Android builds as per the documentation. So I'm not gonna do that because anyway it's working, so I don't want to risk like breaking it completely. Maybe at the end, like we can try to set it up like this. Whew. So we're moving on. Let's go ahead and actually I'm gonna grab quickly a coffee and we're gonna power through the next steps. The next step is going to be to actually connect our UI to WatermelonDB to add and read and fetch and automatically update when something is happening. So stay tuned, we're gonna continue shortly. All right, guys. Okay. I think I also need some fresh air, so let me open the window. And we are ready to continue. So the things that we are doing in our not allocations but accounts page here on the database, right? That's actually something that we have to do in create account. So let's copy this from here and add it in our create account method. We're gonna need to make this method async. So what we are doing here is for the name, we're gonna take it from our state. For the cap, we're gonna try to take it from here, but you're gonna see that we cannot assign a string, which is our state, to a number here. So we're gonna parse it with number parse float. And we're gonna parse that string, and the same thing for the top, number dot parse float top. Now if I'm gonna try to do hello 1.2, 1.5 and press add account, and then if I'm gonna go ahead and do test, which will fetch and log the accounts, which I can actually add them to a json.stringify with some parameters like null and then 2 to display them better. So if I press test now, no, doesn't want to stringify because accounts is doesn't want to stringify accounts. That's weird. But anyway, because it's an array of objects. It's not a JSON. Okay. But anyway, we should have, if I search here, hello, we see name hello, tap 1.6, cap 1.2. That's exactly what we wrote here in the input. So now we are correctly writing to our database our new thing. What I want to do after I write to the database, so after the write, I want to reset these fields by doing set name to nothing, set cap to nothing, and set tap to nothing. So if I press once again, it's going to reset them here. Perfect. Now with this on read, actually it shouldn't happen here, and also it shouldn't happen on button press. It most probably should happen with a use effect when we launch the, where is that, account list component. So there is the account list, which is the component responsible for rendering the list of accounts. So let's try it with a usual way which I'm used to, and then I'm gonna show you a different way, or actually the right way of fetching data with WatermelonDB. So usually how it happens is we have a state variable, for example, const accounts, set accounts, use state is going to be empty array, and then inside the use effect, when we mount this component, what we are doing is we need empty dependencies here to run the use effect when we mount the component. Here we need to create a function fetch accounts, which is going to be an async function, and right away call fetch accounts. Now fetching the accounts, we saw previously how it's done here using this on read. So let's copy it. Accounts collection should be imported from the database. And instead of console logging the accounts, we are going to set them in state. So set accounts. Now let's try to use these accounts in our, or let's try to at least console log accounts. And if I go to this page, use state is not defined because we need to import it from React. And if I'm going to go here, we should automatically see the array of accounts. Now we can take these accounts and use them as the data in our flat list, and we should already see a lot more accounts. And if I'm gonna do here add account. I'm not sure if it will work without cap and tab. But the thing is that it doesn't update automatically. So we see that now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if I'm going to refresh the application, come on, why is it not refreshing? Reload and go here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we see that it was actually added, but we were not observing the changes. And that's going to be the main difference of fetching it like this and observing the queries, or in a way subscribing to updates. Before we actually handle the observing and handling these updates, what I want to do is I want to send the account that we are rendering to this component, because at the moment all of them are displaying some dummy data. And to do that, let's go ahead and receive the item that we are currently rendering, which is of type, should be of type accounts. We can type this one as account array, account from the model. And now accounts is accounts, and this one is account. Okay. And we can send it here as account equal item. Now, this way we are sending down to our component a property called account with a value of one of these accounts from our database. Now we're going to receive this property on the account list item through the properties here using the same name, so account. If we want to define the type to have better typings, we can create a type with the same name of our function. It doesn't have to be the same name, but it's cool that we can use the same name. And specify that it has an account property of type account, imported from our models. And the last step is to assign here, specify that this property object is of type account list item. Now I can take account here, and instead of a profit, I can display account.name. Instead of 10, I can render account.cap. First is cap, and then I can render account.tab. So just like that, we have these accounts test, hello, 1, 2, 3, and so on. If I'm gonna add here new with 1, 2, 2, 4, add account, and then reload the application. Go here to the accounts, we see it at the bottom, new 12, 23, exactly what we wrote in the input. With the styles, we're gonna figure it out a bit later. Now it's not that important. What's more important is to handle. I'm gonna remove it here, and from our accounts page, I will remove this test button because we no longer need it. We are actually implementing it on our UI, so I don't need this functionality anymore. So let's go ahead and commit these changes. Git add, git commit -m, fetch and render accounts fetch and render accounts. So we are currently at the components account list here, where we are fetching and rendering the accounts. So far so good. Can you use decorators? Actually, I'm using decorators for the fields. If I check the model here on the account, I'm using the decorator for the fields. And probably you're asking me if I can use the writer the writer decorator. So I'm gonna show that in a moment as well. Let me take a note here. Writer decorator. So I'm gonna show that and explain how it works as well. Oh, okay. Moving on. What I wanted to do next is going to be around observability, because the problem is that yes, we are adding new accounts, but our account list is not subscribing to new changes. So let's check here connecting components. Connecting components is how we can connect data to our components. And let's check how we can do that. Yes, connecting components is working using higher order components. Higher order components were a thing of a past, like nowadays I don't see them used very often, but in WatermelonDB there is a particular reason why they're using it, and I think they're explaining somewhere in the documentation. So yeah, how it works is having a normal component that will receive an entity or the data of, for example, a comment. This comment can be fetched, sent here, but the problem is that it's not reactive, meaning if a comment changes, the UI is not going to re-render. If the comment is updated or deleted, the comment will not re-render to reflect the changes, unless an update is forced manually or the parent component re-renders. So in order to enhance this component, to make it observe the comment automatically, what we are doing is we are using this with observable from WatermelonDB React, and we are using we're creating a higher order component using this with observable that is being used by wrapping around our normal component and then exporting the enhanced component. So let's take it step by step. What do we have to do? So account lists. This is our normal component. We need to create a enhanced component. To do that, we first need to import with observable from Nozbe WatermelonDB / what was that? / React, like this. Now, at the end of this file, we're going to create the enhance higher order component using the with observable. Here, the first parameter is something similar to how the dependency array works in a use effect, which will say like update whenever these things are updating or whenever these columns are updated. Then we're gonna receive the default parameters, and because by default we didn't have any props in our component, we're not gonna have any props here either. And then we are going to return an object with new properties that will be sent down to this component. For example, instead of fetching them here, I'm going to send down to this component the accounts that it needs to render. These accounts will be fetched here when in the with observable. So accounts is going to be a weight, like not a weight probably. I don't think it's a weight, or maybe, I don't know. Let's see it like this. Accounts collection dot query. Let me double check if that's correct. Database dot query. Yeah, dot query. Yep. So now using this enhance, we can wrap around this accounts list. I made a mistake probably. Observable with observables, plural. Now this enhance, we create an enhanced component or enhanced account list by simply wrapping it around our account list. But make sure not to export our account lists. So I'm going to remove export default from here, but instead export this enhanced account list. So just like that, if I go to the account, I should see exactly this, even though we do not fetch anything here. We fetch them in the observables, and I hope observe question mark 1 and 1 add account. Yes. And I hope that this query is already an observable query, which means that whenever the accounts are changed, like added or deleted or updated, it's going to re-render our account. It's going to refetch and re-render our account list here. So now we no longer need to use effects or a state. We're going to receive them for here, which can also be typed as accounts of type account array, right? And to make things a bit easier to understand, I don't think like we need like 2 lines here, because here we define and here we export. I think we can simply export this enhanced account list. I was just showing how to do it, and like it might make it a bit more confusing, but I'd combine these 2 codes as well by not creating an enhanced component, but by using with observable, and then at the end calling it with the account list here and export default like this. So it will still work, but might be a bit confusing, like why that is happening. So probably I'm gonna go back to defining this enhanced function and then wrapping it around our component. So I really hope that this is not too confusing. As we move like in this tutorial, like we're gonna talk more about that and learn like the intricacy, like how everything is working. But actually, what's happening here behind the scenes that we don't see is on this query, it's actually calling the .observe. And I can do that manually, and it's still gonna work, but in the with observable, it will automatically call it. So it's a shortcut to that. So that's the difference between the fetch, which will request, and that's it, and the .observe, which will subscribe to updates. So we could actually also use this with observe inside the component, define this observable, then clean it. But I think like with this with observable, it's much easier because it handles all of this logic for us, like cleaning, unsubscribing, subscribing back, and making sure that it's optimized for this re-rendering. Okay, so this was our reactive lists. And as you can see, like it's everything that we put here, it's a shortcut to the .observe. Later, we're going to also talk about reactive relationships, counters maybe. Oh, here they are explaining why not using React hooks. There is the discussion here. So in a way, you can actually use the hook, but I think they are saying that it's more performant with higher order components. Okay, there is a lot of advanced stuff here. We can get the database from there. Nah, I'm good. Okay. So this was git status, git add, git commit, observe lists. I'm wondering about one thing, which if I update one of the items in the list, will it update in the list? So for example, to test that, what I'm going to do is, let's go into the application accounts, and here add a new button, again, for testing purposes. Title, test update on press, on test. Let's try to implement this const on test equal. It's going to be an async function, and it's going to do a wait database.write. Here a callback function, and it's going to update something. Let's see, create update logic. Modifying comment await, comment find, comment ID. Maybe I can. Yeah, let's, I don't know, get all the accounts using await accounts collection dot query dot fetch. And then I want to update the first account. Const account equal accounts at position 0, taking the first account, and I want to update it using account.update. Updated account. I want this updated account name to be equal to 1. So if I go here and press test update, I expect the first account name to be 1. It's not, but if I reload the application, let's try reloading the application. And going back to account, it was updated. So what does that mean? That means that the component account list item receives the item, but it's not reactive. It doesn't react to changes. Yes, our whole list is reactive, and whenever we do something and press add account, it's going to change because the query on the whole list is reactive, but the specific item and changes to that icon are not reactive. So if I do here too and press test update, it's not reactive. It needs a reload. So how do we make the component account list item that is rendering one account reactive as well? To do that, we're gonna implement the same logic with observable. So let's go to the account list item. Let's import with observables from WatermelonDB.React. We're not going to export default this function. However, we are going to create a enhance function using the with observables. And here, as we saw before, it was something like this, where we didn't receive any properties and we return something like that's in account list. We didn't receive anything, but we gave down to the account list our accounts. The thing is that this, when using this component, we are going to receive the actual account. And what we want to do is simply give it back here, which in fact is going to do account.observe. So this would be much more correct, account.observe. But I think we need to destructure it. I think we need to destructure it like this. So now we're gonna export default, enhance, and we're gonna enhance our account list item. So the thing that we are exporting and using inside the list will receive the account, but it will take that account and will add one extra step. It will do an observe on that account and give here an observable account. So now if I go here and if on that testing screen I change here to free and press test update, we see it instantly updating here. If I do back 1 and do test update, test update, we see instantly 1. So now this list item is adding the observable around the account that it's receiving. And the thing is, as I said, the observe, this observe can be omitted because it's automatically added, and because it has the same name, it can even be shortened like this. Okay. Think, should we, with observable, account any? Should I do it like this? How to give the type there? Expecting to argument, but go to 1. Oh, and another thing is that we need to add here in these parameters the name of this account in order to update the observable whenever we receive a different account. That's also important, similar to how a use effect works. But here we just specify what of these properties have to resubscribe to new updates. So if sending a new account to this component, we need to resubscribe and not keep the old subscription. It's any. I don't really like any here because in the list it's not gonna ask us to send anything, so I don't really like that. I might do here a count list item like this. And now it will enforce it. Let's check with observable typing. TypeScript. Binding exposure help observable. Observably fine. Oh my god. Props. Offer and post. Oh boy. Okay, this is input props. I'm not sure. I will leave it like this. It knows that it's an account. Account 1. It still kind of works, so it doesn't have proper type definition there. But anyway, if I do test update, it subscribes to these changes if we're gonna do the updates from a different place in our application. So I don't longer need the one test and the button. Now our account list item is also observable and updating automatically when the account that it renders updates somewhere else in the application. So git status, git add, git commit -m, observe account list item. That's it. Okay. Thank you very much, Min and Furdin. Hello, Don. So let's move on. Let's move on because we still have some stuff to handle. I'm not gonna cover focus too much on the UI. I think we are good here. Maybe we want to add a delete method so that we can clean up a bit of this stuff. So yeah, let's try by simply adding a delete icon. Delete. I'm gonna do it like this. Again, it can be improved later, but now I think it's good. So I will do import and design, and I will render the delete item inside each account list item at the end. So something like this, gray. Oh, it looks bad, but I will keep going like this. Maybe I can do flex 1 on the name and then flex 1 on the percentage to make sure that they take the same amount of space like this, and it at least will be aligned. And then the delete icon will be at the end. So this is going to be the const on delete. It's going to be a function that will be called when we press on this button. So on press on delete. 24 is too much, so maybe 18. Okay, that's better. And what do we do in the onDelete? Let's check how to delete an item using WatermelonDB. So in the create, read, update, delete, let's check delete a record. So we just take the first and we either destroy permanently or we mark it as deleted, which is also allow us to synchronize with a cloud. So I think it's better to already use mark as deleted, because if later we're going to synchronize with a cloud, this is going to allow this to happen in the cloud as well. So I think it's simply account.mark as deleted, and that's it. Let's try it with the last account 12. If I press, I don't know what's happening. Possible rejection. Mark as deleted can only be called from inside of a writer. Yes, because I need database.write, and here mark as deleted is not assignable to async. Yes. And this is promise, so I need a wait here, and probably I need a wait here, which needs this function to become async once. So let's try it again. If I press, it works. And it automatically updates just because our list is an enhanced list that observes the changes. So it will observe both adding new stuff and removing stuff as well. So now we saw how to delete, and we actually saw how to update as well in the previous step when we were testing. So that was our git add, git commit, -m, delete account. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I didn't even realize when I finished my coffee, when I drank my coffee. I think it's time to move to the allocations. And for that, we're gonna add new models in our database schema, and we're also going to learn about relationships between models. So as I said, allocation, just to remind, the definition of allocation is the process of sending money from the income account to all the small plates. So it usually happens, like based on the book, it happens twice a month, on 10th and 24th of the month. So inside one allocation, we're gonna have multiple account allocations. So for example, on 10th, we create one allocation with that date. We specify how much income we had, and then for each account in our profile, for each account that we define, we're gonna specify how much allocation should happen for that specific account during this allocation. So think about this as just specifying the date or a group of allocations, and this as every single line based on how many accounts do we have. Probably on the UI, it's also going to be easier. So when we add the allocation, we specify the income, it automatically calculates us the value based on the percentages that we have set. And here, when we render it, we see that this whole component is one allocation, and every line below it is going to be one account allocation. This way we have like a many-to-many relationship between accounts and allocations. Because inside one allocation, we allocate for multiple accounts at the same time. So that's why we need this intermediate table. So let's go ahead and define them. I think we need some kind of UI first. So I'm gonna start with a new allocation page. As we have here in our mocks, the new allocation will have only one input for our income, and it will calculate our profit, owner, tax, and OPEX. So that means that inside our application, allocation, new, we are going to have the following form. Let's right away play with style sheet and move from rendering to styling at the same time, just to make sure that we manage in time everything. Create. We're gonna have a container for the whole page. We're gonna have probably a label. We're gonna probably have an input, and we'll see what else we have. So let's define here styles.container, and the container will, it's okay. Now we need the income with an input. So it's going to be text styles.label input, not input, but income. And that income is going to be, let's say, below it, we need a text input. So text input from React Native. The placeholder for this input is going to be something like this, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's add some padding to our whole container. 10, the label, font weight, bold. Maybe we need to put them in the same line. I don't know. For the input, I'm gonna use a background color white. Background color white, but I didn't assign here styles.input. Padding 10. Border radius 10, or maybe 5. Okay. Let's put them inside a view. With a style row, input row. I'm not even sure if I want to put them in a row, but let's try flex direction row. And then our input is going to have flex 1 to take all the available space. Okay. And the input row will also have line items center. And here I have 2 commas to make sure that they are both aligned. And let's add a gap here to make sure that we have some spacing between that one and. But the label will, let's give it a width of 100 pixels to be fixed. Now below it, we're gonna have all the accounts, but we're gonna cover them in a moment. Let's start by handling this allocation, because if we look in the table, the allocation itself, it only has the date and the income. So let's save this thing. Let's define the table. Let's save it when we press save here. And then we're gonna add the distribution between accounts, let's say. So there are a couple of last things that we still need here. For example, the field in income state and set income, use state, initially is going to be empty string. Let's assign it to this text input as value equal income, and then set income, not set income, but on change text, we're gonna update our state variable. So to be able to keep it in state. Now at the bottom of the screen, probably we're gonna have a button on press is going to do save, and the title of this button is going to be save. Let's define it here, const save equal, it's probably going to be an async function that later will write to database. So if I go here and press new allocation and then press save, nothing happens, but this function is going to be called. On the, yeah, for now it's good. Maybe on the container itself, we can add here a gap of 10 to make sure that we add some spacing between the input row and the button. Okay. So this is the UI for our new allocation. Let's go ahead and cover the WatermelonDB part. And for that, we need to set up a new table in our database and create a new model that will allow us to interact with the data there. So we need a new schema. We're gonna start with changing the schema inside our database schema. And the same way as we created the table schema for our accounts, we're gonna create a new one below using table schema. The name of the table is going to be Allocations. It should be plural. And the columns should be ID. We don't specify, it automatically will be mentioned. So the name of what else? We need the date, or better, instead of calling it date of type date, we can maybe use a predefined field from Watermelon called created at. In the schema, special columns, you can add special created at and updated at columns to enable automated create update tracking. And by adding them, by having this created at, we are not going to have to specify it. WatermelonDB automatically will take the current timestamp and write it in the created at when we write something. And the type of it should be what's the type of it? If I check here, it should be number. So it should be number. Okay, that's the first column. The second one is going to be name. If I look in our plan, we have income. We need to know during that allocation, how much income did we receive and did we distribute between different accounts. So the type is also going to be a number. Okay, now that we have a table schema, it's going to automatically be added to our database because we are specifying the schema here. The next step is going to be to go into the model and create the model for the allocation.ts. It's going to work similar to our account. So let me actually copy paste it because I'm lazy. Change the name of a class from account to allocation. Table name should be the same as the one in our schema called allocations. And for the fields, we're gonna have a number field called income. Let's call the field also income. And I think we're gonna also have a field. Let's see how we can do what we should do with created at. In the model definition, the created at is read only date created at. So let's do it like this. A read only, and the read only should be imported from the decorators. Let's import it here. We don't need the text at the moment, but we need a date decorator. So now it has the created at field as well. And here is why we need to specify the income twice. The thing is that on the database layer, there are different best practices in terms of naming. For example, we need to use the underscores, like the snake case. In our JavaScript code, like the best practice is to use camel case. So that's a benefit of having to specify them twice. And another benefit is that if we update something, if we want to change from income to revenue, we can do that here in our application code, but we can leave on the database to be income so that our application is backward compatible and works with previous versions as well. So I'm gonna keep it like this. Okay, so we have allocation. Okay. I think from the database index, the same way as we did accounts collection, let's do the allocations collection as database.get allocation. And here we need to specify the table allocations, the same name as we used in the schema. So using this allocations collection, we can go in our file application new on this new screen, and when we press save, what we can do is we can start with a database.write to start the transaction. And here we're gonna do allocation.collection.create new allocation. And here we're gonna specify that the new allocation dot income is equal to the income that the user set here. But we also need to parse it to number. So number.parse float going to be to this income. We don't set the created at and the ID because they will automatically be generated by WatermelonDB. So let's give it a try and let's write here an allocation 1, 2, 3, 4, save, unhandled promise rejection, cannot read property create or of null, because allocation is coming from there. Did I mess the schema? Oh, I think I know why. I think that the schema was not migrated. So let me check the schema, double check if the name here is the same. Yeah, I think it's the same. And if I reload the application, it should show a warning. Does it show a warning? This is from new allocation 1, 2, 3, save. Yeah, I think that it didn't run the migration. So let's check how that would happen. In the usage, connecting, querying, writer, create, setup, migrations. The migration is the mechanism by which you can add new tables, columns to the database in a backward compatible way. Without migration, if a user of your app upgrades from one version to another, their local database will be cleared at launch and they will lose all their data. always use migrations. Probably in development you can skip them, but in production always use migrations. Without them, the users will lose their data. So let's see how we can add a migration. Hook up migrations to the database adapter. We did that. Migrations workflow. When you make schema changes, when you use migrations, be sure to do this in the specific order to minimize the likelihood of making an error. First, we need to add a new migration. First, define the migration, that is, define the change that occurs between two versions of a schema, such as adding a new table or a new table column. Don't change the schema file yet. Oh, I already did. I don't really want to write another schema. Like, it looks like I have to do a lot of things, like I have to write schema, I have to write model, and now I have to write the same like for migrations, which I understand why it's happening, but in development I think it can be easier. When you're not using migration, the database will reset, delete all the contents whenever you change the schema version. If a migration failed, okay, let's try to manually change the without a migration now, just to skip it for a second, because we're still in development. Let's go to the index or to the schema and change the version here from 1 to 2. Missing migration. And can I think I'm gonna just simply, yeah, as they are writing here, you might want to comment it out for development purposes, because if we don't specify migrations, the database will be reset. So now, after I change the schema version to 2, if I will go to accounts, I don't have any accounts because my database was reset. So this is okay, like in development, but in production we need to write migrations. But I was wanting to try the allocation. So 1, 2, 3, save. It's still possible and handle rejection. You cannot read property create of null. Am I doing the create wrong? But create of null, that means that allocation collection is null. Let's check on how we are adding a new account. Dot create from DB. Allocations. Oh, I forgot to add the model class here. So after creating the model, we need to put it in the database. So let's do here allocation. And right now save. We don't have any promise rejection, which means that it works. Okay, so yeah, another thing that we need to remember to do. So one thing, we need to define the schema. Second one, we need to create a model. Third one, we need to add the model to our database. Then we also need to create a migration. Then we need to increment the schema version and it will run the migration. That would be in production. So what do we have here? Hopefully it was a new income was added, and now we can go ahead and render them on the allocations list. But let's go ahead and do here git add git commit -m allocation table and create allocation. And now let's go ahead and fetch them and render on the screen. So inside our allocations, where let's actually gonna go ahead and in components create a new list, a list of allocations called allocations list.tsx. The allocation list is going to be, let's define it as a function, allocations list equal, not equal, but a function, return. Probably it's going to be a flat list where the data is going to come from our properties. For now, I can do here empty array. Render item, I believe, is going to be another component called allocation list item.tsx. For list item, I'm going to generate a basic default component like this. Allocation list item, and in the list, I will simply render allocation list item, the component that we just defined. Now at the end, let's simply export default for now location list like this. And on the screen here in the allocations index, we have this link for adding a new allocation, but below it, I think we want to have the allocation list. We no longer need this text. We will need this link, but maybe we're gonna make it like look more beautiful, like as a button. I don't know. We're gonna see. For now, it's good like this. Yeah, let's leave it like this. It just allows us to go to the new allocation page. And now this allocation list is rendering. So if I add here 1, 2, 3, we see 3 allocation list items. Perfect. So far, so good. It's just the bare bone components. Now we need to fetch data about allocations and to subscribe to updates, to observe that list. Similar to how we did in the accounts list. We created the observable, we used the accounts collections, we query them, and we enhanced our list by providing there the data. So let's do it step by step, slowly, just to practice more like these steps in order to help us understand this pattern, because it's quite a different one, like especially for me, like the whole process is new, so it needs like we need to practice this multiple times until we learn it. So we need them with observables from React. Using with observables, we create this enhance function with observables. The first properties is an array called trigger props, like what properties should trigger these observables. In our case, it's going to be no properties, because when allocation list, not this one, but the one that is going to be rendered, not going to receive any data. That means that here in the props, we're not going to receive anything, but we need to send something here, such as allocations. Where from? From allocation collection dot query. And behind the scenes, it will also do observe, which it's optional, so we can simplify it by doing this. And lastly, the thing that we export from this file should be wrapped around this enhance. Now, this allocation list component is going to receive allocations, so we can use them here instead of this array. I believe we're going to have only one. Yes, we do. And we can take it here from item and send it to our allocation component like this item. It has the type any, but we can specify that no, it's not any, it's actually an allocation from our model. allocation. Now on the allocation list item here, we can also receive this allocation of type allocation. And we can render here in the text, the allocation.date, for example, or created at. And in another text, we can render the income. Created at of undefined, because allocations, not allocations, allocation. Objects are not valid. What is the object? Is it the created at? Or the, yes, the created at is an object. Let's see what is the type of this console log. And if I look in the console, we need to check the type of that created at. Let me delete it for a second. Okay, so I think it's a date. So what I can do is I can call created at dot to string, because it's a date. It doesn't see it as a date because I made a mistake. I didn't make a mistake, but in our model allocation, I didn't specify the type of this created at, which should be a date from JavaScript. So now in the allocation list item, I can call this to string because it knows that created at is a date. So now it shows Friday, April 19 at 18:23, which is exactly correct. So if I go to the new allocation page and do 5.6, save, come back, it's automatically there because our list, we are subscribing to new allocations, to the deleted allocations. So it displays here properly. Data, what's going on here? Allocations. Oh, because I have to specify that it's an array. Yes, like that. Okay, so that's our list. Now probably is going to be to a little bit adjust the styles of this view. So let's go ahead and import the style sheet and create the styles. Container, income. So let's do here style container styles.income. Maybe styles.date as well. And instead of to string, let's try a to ISO string. No, to local date string. Yeah, I think that's better. With a custom library like days.js, you can adjust like the format, but for me, I think that's good. So I'll just adjust a bit the styles of this container. I want to render them on the same line. So flex direction is going to be a row. Justify content, or maybe because this, let's do here another view with a style dot header and put the income and this one in the header, because from this UI we have a special style for this header. And let's do it like this. So the flex direction is actually going to be on the header itself. The background color, I don't know, Gainsborough, I don't know, something like that. Let's go to the allocation list and see what's going on here. If I had a style here, background color red. It's only like this. But why? Because if we go in the application, allocation index, we have a container, and the container has a lot of stuff. So I'm going to delete all of them and leave only the flex one. Now, if I go back to our allocation list, I can remove this one. I can add here a content container style with gap property to add some spacing between the items, maybe even more, 10, and a padding, 10, like this. Okay, back to the allocation list item. The header should also do justify content space between to move the income at the end. The header will also have some padding like 10. The whole container will have border radius 10 and overflow hidden in order to hide everything that overflows hidden. Okay. What else? I think for now it's good. Maybe the income font size 30, 24, font weight, bold, and some color green. Yeah, that's good. Let's add a dollar amount before the income itself. For the date, I'm gonna leave it like this. No biggie. So yes. One more step in the application. Allocations index. For this link, what should we do? I'll do some kind of, I need some styles. So let's put here a pressable, which is a component that allows press events. It's like a button. To style this pressable, let's do styles.button. I will define here the styles.button. Text string must be inside text. What? Should we have a text inside pressable? I don't remember that being the case. But maybe. Okay. So maybe we don't even need the text. We can have text style here. Styles dot, come on, styles dot button. I think I lost my style, so I have to do Ctrl Z a couple of times, and only then. So my button can have a background color, I don't know, green. Oh, very bad, but it's okay. Color, white. Margin, 10. But the thing is that most probably we need as child on the link in order for the styles of this text to take effect and not render a separate one. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a bit of padding as well. Align, text align center, because we're working with a text. Font weight, bold. Border radius, 5. Overflow hidden. Yeah, that's good. That's good enough. So now if we press on new allocation, we go here. We can add here something, save. If I come back, it's added here automatically. Nice. So perfect. Most probably what I need to do here in the query is sort them the other way around, or should I invert the flat list? No, I think I need to sort it the other way. So let's see how we can sort things. Querying sort by, so database.get.query sorts by number. Okay, sorts by, I don't know, sorts by, okay, Q, but where is it Q from? Where is it Q coming from? Okay, it's from here. So in our account list, let's try to import this one, the Q, and inside query, if I do Q dot sort by, and here I need to provide created at fail to prepare. So let's see, sort by, and yeah, I need to also do Q ascending or descending. Allocations, Q ascending. I think this is the field, so it should be created underscore at, right? Yes. So if I do ascending, it's like this. If I do descending, it's the other way around. So I need descending. Most recent allocations at the top. So if I go here and do 1, save and come back, the 1 is here at the top. And I can do the actual, like, go back automatically on the new page here under the save. I can do here router, imported from Expo router somewhere, dot back. So if I go to a new allocation and do 2, save, come back, it's here. 3, save, come back, it's here. Perfect, perfect. Maybe I can also reset the income here to empty string. 4, save, come back, it's here. Perfect. So with this, we have our git status. And you see how fast everything is working. Git add, git commit. Fetch and render allocations. Okay, so what's left is the account allocation. Account allocation, oh boy. Not sure if we actually managed to finish it today. So I'm thinking maybe we should do part 2. What do you say? Hello, goodbye from Barcelona. Hello, Slow. How are you doing? Four minutes left on hell and the food up tutorial. Took like 3 weeks to watch all the 8 hours. Amazing, but yeah, hopefully you found that valuable. Hello from Ukraine. Hello, Serhi. Okay, so will I manage to implement this? I don't really want to rush it too much. So, because we have like 20 more minutes. And this account allocation is when doing the allocation, like when adding it, we want to see different accounts, their percentage, and automatically calculating the value based on it. So let's try to first in the allocation new. Here we actually need some data. We need data about accounts. So we are going to have also the import with observables. And we are going to create here const enhance with observables. It's not going to receive anything, but we need a list of accounts, because when creating a new account, we need to calculate a new allocation. We need to know the accounts that we want to distribute to. So accounts equal accounts collection dot query accounts. Now, instead of exporting this function, I'm going to export default enhance that function. How is it called? New allocation screen. So what's going on here? Unused label. Oh, because I need to wrap my object with round brackets in order to make sure that we are returning an object. It's not a body of a function. Now we're going to receive all of these accounts here. Accounts. Accounts. And below everything, I'm going to be able to go ahead and do view. Maybe for all accounts, I'm going to map through them, like simply accounts.map. Let's define the type of this account. Array. So I'm going to map through each account. And I'm going to render a view. Where I will simply render a text initially with account.name, and then account.cap, which is current allocation percentage. We need to know the percentage that we need for that account. When mapping, we also need a key, so we can use account.id as the key. And let's go to the new allocation. So we see that we have a new only one profit account. If I'm gonna add here, for example, taxes, that is 20%, and then expenses 60, I don't know, 60, add accounts, and then come back to this, it automatically adds here. So we see the percentages that we need to allocate to those accounts. Now it's time to calculate the value based on the income multiplied by this percentage. So the value is going to be our income, or better say number.parse float income multiplied by the account percentage and divided by 100. So it doesn't really work because now it's nothing there. So I think we can initialize it with 0 maybe. Or we can say number float. Yeah, it's okay. And if I do here 100, we see that for profit we'll receive $2, taxes $20, and expenses $60. So that's the whole goal of this application. Simple calculator. So I think I will use the same input row for our view here. What will it do? It will make it a row. And for the first, this one, I'm gonna do flex 1. So now if I do 10, we see 1000, we see automatically updating and calculating there. Perfect. And the next step is going to be when we save, we want to save these values inside a new table called account allocations. Account allocations. Let's see if we have time, because I believe we might. Or not to rush it and to do it properly. Next time. Yeah, it's gonna save, it's gonna show it here. But I also want to display later like how was the distribution there. So yeah, probably we're gonna have to do part 2 of this tutorial. Because as I said, most probably I'm going to actually publish this application, because at least I'm gonna use it, and maybe there are other people who are running their businesses and following this profit first approach. The thing is that this profit first approach can also be applied to personal life as well. Like if you have multiple goals and you define like the percentages of your income that goes there, you can apply it, and it's going to help you. So yeah. Let me go ahead and check what changes we have done. Git status, git add, git commit, calculate account distribution. Okay, so that's this. And should we work maybe on some UI? Or if you have any questions, guys, feel free to ask. That was intense. That was really intense, but I'm really happy how it turned out. Because as I said before, like in November, I tried WatermelonDB. I had some issues with the setup, with the configuration, but now it looks that it's working perfectly fine. So, yep, love it. Let's see if on Android it's going to work as well. So let's go first of all into the account. Let's go to, come on, Android, what's going on? You're laggy. Yeah, Android is not cooperating. Let's try to open it again. Let's go to accounts. Let's create an account, for example, profit 10, 20, add account, then tax 20, add account. Okay, now if I go to allocations and try to add a new allocation, 123. It's going to calculate automatically based on the profit. 25, perfect. If I save, it's gonna save it here and display it in our allocations. You might think that we can simply calculate here based on the cap, but it's not. It's possible. Like instead of having this stuff that will display below, like here, the distribution, we can calculate it based on the current cap and based on this income, the same way as we calculate it on the newer page, like here. But the problem is that the cap is always going to change. Like you're every quarter, you're gonna change it to move more towards the target allocation percentage. So if you change it and later view it, it's not gonna reflect what actually happened back then. So that's why we're gonna have to store in the database the actual amount that you allocated there and the cap the cap that was at that specific time, not at the moment, but at that specific time. So yeah, that's gonna help us make sure that even when we update data, for example, we go to accounts, we're gonna click update, we're gonna change these percentages, it's not going to change how we view it here. So that's what we're gonna do in the second episode of this application. And works on Android, on iOS, everything works fine. So yeah, I'm reading now about these writers, and this is the actual recommended way of doing it. Instead of defining inline writers, it would be better to take it from the inline stuff, put it on our model as a separate function, and then call this function. So an example of this would be, let's say, creating the allocation, new allocation screen. So that would mean that on the model allocation, we can have a writer, which is a decorated imported from here. And I think because we are creating, we're not updating, we're changing something, it should be static, and it should also be async. It should be, or maybe it should be a constructor. Advanced readers, delete, writer. Create a new record, create. Create, let's try with simply create, and we are going to receive an income as number. So what's going to happen here is going to be exactly what's happening here inside the writer method. So the benefit is that by defining this writer, it's not allocation, but it's that's a bit, I'm not exactly sure like if I'm doing it right. Income, I don't need to parse it as float, it's already float, so it's equal to income. So let's try to call it as allocation.create instead of all of this. So allocation.create, and there is going to be the number parse float. So let's try a new allocation. 1, save, possible unhandled, because cannot read property right of undefined. Right of undefined? Oh, because I think in the create we need to do return await, new collection. 2123, save, possible unhandled. Inline writer method, async add comment. But this is under a post, adding a comment there. This.collections to access database collections. This.collections. No. Batch update. Super. Yeah, like I don't like that it doesn't explain how to simply create an item. Like, yes, I understand like how to update, how to delete and stuff, but how to create something. And it shows how to create a comment inside a post. Yeah, okay, I understand. But how to create not part of a post object, but as a on part of a class, like as a static method, it's not explained, which is a bit weird. Writer, static async, maybe like this. Cannot read write of undefined. Yeah, weird a bit. New comment await these collections. Dot get comments dot create. Cannot read property write of undefined. Yeah, weird. But I'm gonna check more and see how we can do this like this. Now I'm gonna comment it out, and we're gonna have because here, wait a second, allocation, is allocation undefined? No. So I'm gonna leave it like this, so it still works. Perfect. All right, guys, so that was it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. We're gonna have a part 2 where we're gonna improve it with more relationships, with more data, and hopefully I'm gonna have this application published. So if you're interested, it's gonna be somewhere there, if I'm gonna still have time. But yeah, I intend to have a second part tutorial, so keep an eye on the channel, subscribe for more updates. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video, comment down below what other tutorials you'd like to see in future. And I'm going